بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. Continuing from last week, this week we are going to speak about Athan Iqamah, and then we will start with the prayers. The definition of Adhan in Arabic language, it's notice. And in Sharia, it is specific saying for the start of prayer. So that's the definition of Adhan in Islam. Of course, the Adhan has a big reward from Allah Azza wa Jal, and there are many hadiths that spoke about how the reward of the Adhan and the Mu'adhin, the one who calls for the Adhan, is really higher than any other reward for similar things. It's better than Imam position. To be a Mu'adhin is better than to be an Imam. Of course. Who can say why? Because to be an Imam, you are guaranteeing the prayers of every single person behind you. So meaning that if you made a mistake in your Imamah, all of them, their prayer is correct. Who's going to bear the mistakes of all of them? The Imam. Whereas the Adhan actually has very high reward from Allah Azza wa Jal. That's why we were taught from our scholars that make Adhan even if they pushed you back or prevented you, and don't become an Imam even if they pushed you in. Why? Because of the reward and the accountability between the Imam and the Adhan. Adhan is Sunnah Mu'akkada. What do we mean by Sunnah Mu'akkada? Remember we spoke about Sunnah Mu'akkada, meaning that if a group made it within the country or the suburb, nobody will be held accountable from the whole suburb. But if it hasn't been done by anyone, everyone is accountable in the Day of Judgment. Meaning that at least we need to have one Adhan in the country or in the city, so it will be not accountable, or nobody will be accountable from the whole city. But if no Adhan was raised in a city, then everyone in the city is accountable in the Day of Judgment. So that's the Sunnah Mu'akkada. It's Sunnah Mu'akkada for all prayers except for Janazah, Eid, Eclipse, and Taraweeh. There is no Adhan. What we say when we want to start the praying, we say As-Salatu Jami'ah. So the Salah is gathered. It's Sunnah for women to make Iqamah alone, not Adhan. So women don't make Adhan. Men make Adhan. Women, they make Iqamah, and the Iqamah should not be loudly, but in a voice that everyone who is praying can hear it. It's Sunnah to do Adhan and Iqamah even alone. In one of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said to one of the companions, if you are in a desert, if you are a shepherd, if you are alone in the desert, you want to pray, make Adhan loudly, nothing will hear your sound except will witness for you in the Day of Judgment. So making Adhan, if you are outside, going in the, for example, in bushes, in the wherever in the outside, nobody is hearing you, just make Adhan as loudly as you can. If praying two fard, so for example, if you're joining for traveling, if you're joining for any, for example, other reason, then it's one Adhan and two Iqamah. So if we are joining, for example, and shortening Dhuhr and Asr together, so we make one Adhan, but we make two Iqamas for the two prayers. There are conditions to make Adhan. So we cannot make Adhan for the Salah except when certain conditions been fulfilled. So condition number one, that the time already entered. So you cannot make Adhan before the Adhan of Adhan or the time of Dhuhr, for example, and you claim that you made the Adhan for Dhuhr. It's not valid. If you made adhan for dhuhr before the time of dhuhr, that adhan is not counted, and you will be held accountable if no adhan was raised for the whole city. It has to be in Arabic language. We cannot have the adhan in different languages. Okay? Some people can hear them, or at least themselves if he is alone. So, the condition of the adhan is that some people can hear you if you are making that. Or at least you can hear yourself if you are alone. This is acceptable adhan. This is one of the conditions. It's not just you are closing your mouth and then making your adhan on your tongue inside and nobody can hear you. At least you need to hear yourself in the adhan to be accounted as an adhan, and you take the reward for that adhan. It has to be continuous. You cannot start the adhan and then stop and have a break or have a coffee and then continue the adhan. It needs to be continuous. It has to be one person. It's not like a forum, two person, one say Allahu Akbar, say Hayya ala Salah. It cannot. It needs to be only one person. The person who raises the adhan must be Muslim, sane, and a man. Okay? We did not say that this person must be reaching puberty, because a kid can make adhan, so long as he recognizes and he is actually in control of his adhan. It's not required to have wudu if you are making adhan. No need to have wudu. No need to face the qibla, because there is no evidence that the companions were facing the qibla or the Prophet ﷺ ordered anyone to face the qibla. It's not required to be standing and not talking during it, so we cannot talk during making the adhan. So you can imagine someone leaning on his side and just sleeping and making adhan. It's acceptable, but it's not actually, in Islam, it's valid, no issues with that, but it's not polite to deal with the adhan in that way. Whereas we have to, majority, we have to stand, but it's not a condition actually to stand. The words of the adhan were revealed in one of the verses, in one of the hadith, the authentic hadith, which the Prophet ﷺ heard. One of the companions saw in his dream the adhan, and he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ said to him, "Go teach Bilal this adhan, because Bilal has a beautiful sound, so he can raise the adhan with his sound." And when Umar al-Khattab was hearing the adhan, when he was in his house, he came running to the Prophet ﷺ and he said to him, "I swear by Allah, I saw these same words in my dream, the words of the adhan." We all know these. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So Allahu Akbar is 4 times. Then Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah is 2 times. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah is 2 times. Hayya ala Salah 2 times. Hayya ala al-Falah 2 times. Allahu Akbar 2 times. La ilaha illallah 1 time. Of course, unfortunately, there are some sects, especially in the Shia, not all the Shia, who changed that adhan. And they add, after Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, they add Ashhadu anna Aliyan Waliyallah, which hasn't been in any of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ that this is an adhan. And some of them, after say Hayya ala al-Falah, they say Hayya ala khayr al-amal. If you hear these words, you will understand that these are not from what the Prophet ﷺ has taught us, and that's a bid'ah in the adhan. What are some sunnahs in the adhan? So if I want to do adhan as the Prophet ﷺ used to do and to teach the companions, we need to have a muadhin that has a beautiful sound and a loud sound. At their time, because there are no speakers, no AV system, then the muadhin need to be actually with a good and loud sound. But nowadays we have the sound system, no need for a loud sound. Someone with a beautiful adhan. In Arabic language, there are things called maqamat. Maqamat is it's coming from some musical trends, but in Arabic it's called maqamat. And these actually, the Qurra, for example, you will like the recitation of the Quran from, for example, Mshari al-Afasi. He has a specific maqam of reading the Quran, so you will like it. Some are like sad, some like happy, some like it will move between the feelings. So some of the like, if you can Google, I can pass to you some of the YouTube videos where people make the adhan with different maqamat, and then you can feel actually the taste of how beautiful the adhan with different ways of different tones or different actually approach or the methodology. To make the adhan while standing is a sunnah. As we said, it's not required, but it's a sunnah. And on high place. Previously it was in minara before the electricity and the sound system, but now to do it in high place so it can reach everyone. Mu'adhin needs to be free. It's a sunnah, meaning that he is not a slave. And adult, trustworthy, because he needs to recite the adhan words precisely. He should not make any mistake. He needs to be righteous, knowing the timing of prayers. He cannot be someone who doesn't recognize the timing of the prayers, and he is responsible about the adhan. Sunnah to have wudu, sunnah not to be blind, although we know that one of the mu'adhin of the Prophet ﷺ was blind, which is, whose name? Do you know? The Prophet ﷺ used to have two mu'adhin, Bilal bin Rabah and Abdullah ibn Maktoum. Abdullah ibn Maktoum was blind, but he used to be having the adhan whenever the companions will come to him and say, the Fajr came, make the adhan. So someone will actually say to him when the time is. It's sunnah to put the fingers in the ear, because that will give a good sound based on the physics of the sound. Slow down while calling the adhan, not fast adhan or not extremely slow, but a bit moderate slow. Face the Qibla, it is sunnah. Turn right when say Hayya ala salah, and turn left when say Hayya ala al-falah. That's to distribute the sound across. Not to take wages for make adhan or salary. And that's the best. The Prophet ﷺ said, the longest necks in the day of judgment are those who call for adhans. And the adhans have actually a high reward. To have two mu'adhin, like the Prophet ﷺ used to have, to make the adhan exactly at the beginning of the time. Then after that you can do the iqamah whenever you are going to pray. Not to stand except when the mu'adhin finishes or about to finish. So what happens is that when the mu'adhin starts, we are sitting in the masjid, we should not stand straight away. You know why? Who escapes when the adhan starts? You know the hadith? Shaitan. So the moment the adhan starts, as the Prophet ﷺ said, Shaitan will escape, because he escapes from adhan. That's why one of the things that you can know, I don't want you to apply it on yourself, if there is some things that you are not comfortable, is how do you feel when you hear the adhan? If when you hear the adhan you feel comfortable, you feel relaxed, meaning that you are healthy and sound. Okay? So it's not sunnah to stand even if you want to pray sunnah or tahiyyat al-masjid or sunnah between two adhans. It's not sunnah when the mu'adhin starts his adhan for you to stand, because you are as if you are doing the same like what shaitan does. No, keep sitting until the mu'adhin finishes his whole adhan, and then you stand in order to pray sunnah or to pray whatever. Makrouh acts for adhan, things that are makrouh. To leave any of the previous sunnahs that we mentioned is makrouh. Singing the adhan. So there is a difference between actually singing the adhan and making the adhan with a beautiful noise or sound. Walking while doing the adhan is makrouh, and not to leave the masjid after adhan except for a reason. Abu Huraira was sitting in a masjid. After the adhan was finished, one of the people came, stood and left the masjid. Abu Huraira was just watching him until he left the masjid. So the companions looked at Abu Huraira, and Abu Huraira said, as for that person, he disobeyed Abu al-Qasim. Abu al-Qasim is the Prophet ﷺ. So whoever actually leaves the masjid after the adhan is disobeying the Prophet ﷺ. So we should not leave the masjid after the finish of the adhan, except if there is a valid reason, of course. Responding to the call or to the adhan, the sunnah recommends that while the adhan call to prayer is being called, one should listen attentively and repeat every line silently after the muadhin, the one who calls the prayer. But when he says Hayya ala salah, so when the muadhin says Allahu Akbar, you silently say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You hear yourself. And when he say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, you say silently Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. So you repeat exactly after the muadhin, except when he says Hayya ala salah, which is come to pray, and Hayya ala al-falah, which is come to success, one should say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And at the end, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever followed the muadhin, so I will be interceding for him in the day of judgment. And whoever followed the muadhin and asked for me al-wasila. Al-wasila, you know that after the end of the adhan we say Allahumma rabba hadhihi ad-da'wati at-tamma was-salati al-qa'ima. O you, the Lord of this call and the prayer that is going to be performed, Ati Muhammadan al-wasilata wal-fadila. Grant Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam al-wasila, which is a level in Jannah. Only one will be granted that level. So the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever repeats after the muadhin and then asked for Allah Azza wa Jal to grant me al-wasila, I will intercede for him in the day of judgment. So we want the intercession of the Prophet ﷺ. We need the intercession of anyone in the day of judgment. So this is a way to gain the intercede. So when we do the Iqamah or at Fajr time, there is an addition at Fajr time, which is after we say Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala al-falah, Hayya ala al-falah, what do we say? As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. So what do we reply after the muadhin says As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm? We say Sadaqta wa bararta. So you were truthful and you were doing good. Okay? So Sadaqta wa bararta is what we say when the muadhin at Fajr time says Hayya as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. Better for whoever reading Quran to stop reading and listen and repeat after muadhin. So if I am reading Quran in the masjid, muadhin started having the adhan, I should stop and repeat after the muadhin. This is better for the reward than actually continuing reading the Quran. After the adhan, we pray on the Prophet ﷺ, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, and then make the known dua, Allahumma rabba hadhihi ad-da'wati at-tamma was-salati al-qa'ima, ati Muhammadan al-wasilata wal-fadila, wab'athhu Allahumma maqaman mahmudan alladhi wa'adta, and grant him the highest level that you promised. And that's the dua. The other thing is that the Prophet ﷺ said between two adhans there is a prayer. So it's a sunnah to pray 2 rak'ahs between the adhan and the iqamah. That sunnah has nothing to do with the sunnah of any prayer. Like for example, if you came at Maghrib time, and then the Adhan of Maghrib came, and then you have time until Iqamah. Between these two Adhans, the Prophet ﷺ said between each two Adhans there is a Sunnah. So you can pray Sunnah. As well, the time between the Adhan and the Iqamah, the dua is acceptable in that time. So it is Sunnah to make dua as much as you can between the Adhan and the Iqamah.
Just quickly.
Yes.
What's because there's a version of the dua, so after the adhan where there's that last part where there's some people, there's a practice saying إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادَ.
Yes.
Is that sah?
This is not in the hadith. It has been added by the people. It's like you are emphasizing that Allah Azza wa Jal, you are saying to Allah, you fulfill your promise. Okay? So the scholars, some of the strict scholars said, well, this is a worship, so you should stick exactly to what has been mentioned in the hadith. So the hadith did not say at the end, إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادَ. Other scholars, they said, well, this is not part of what we say as a reply, but this is something that is outside the dua that we make. So this is a specific dua from our side. That's why they said we are not adding anything to this religion, rather than we are just worshipping Allah, remembering Allah in this case. So at the end of the day, I have no issues with saying إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادَ. I prefer to stick, but I don't say for those who say إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادَ, you have done bid'ah. Because the other group will go extreme and say this is bid'ah. But this group says, actually, when you ask them, they say, no, we are not saying that this is what actually the full dua, but this is an extra dua that we make. So that's how. It is sunnah mu'akkada to do iqamah as well, as we said. According to Imam Ahmad and Shafi'i, this is how the iqamah, which is what we know all together. So Allahu Akbar twice, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah once, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah once, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah once, Qad qamat as-salah, Qad qamat as-salah twice, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. Now, Imam Abu Hanifa, he gives takbir 2 times, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and then everything else is twice. Okay? So it's almost similar to the adhan, except by adding قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةُ قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةُ. Imam Malik, only once. Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, Qad qamat salah, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. So only once he do it. So all of them, they are relying on ahadith, but the hadith that are more authentic are the hadith of Imam Ahmad and Imam Shafi'i, which what we practice nowadays in our masjids. So the other ways that you see, sometimes if you go to the city mosque, you will see the adhan of Imam Abu Hanifa or Iqamah of Imam Abu Hanifa, which is 4 times. So do not say that they are wrong. They are following the methodology of Imam Abu Hanifa. It's okay, although it's less likely that this is the truth, how the Prophet ﷺ wanted us. But we respect always the opinions of the people who actually follow the imams, one of the 4 imams. Rules of Iqamah, number 1, speed up. So it's not like the adhan, slow down. We said that the adhan, we slow down. Iqamah is speed up. Best Iqamah to be done by whoever does the adhan. That's the best. Best for Iqamah in the same position of the adhan. So the person, wherever he did the adhan, he does the Iqamah. People shouldn't stand unless they see the Imam stand or come, or the Iqamah finished. Okay? So how does that? Usually we will be waiting, for example, for the prayer to start. So they will do Iqamah. If the Imam comes, you stand. Or the Imam was sitting and he stood up, we stand. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, the Imam was made so we can follow him. So we imitate what the Imam does. Or if the Imam did not come, we wait until the end of the Iqamah and then we stand. For Iqamah, wudu and facing the Qibla, people repeat after the caller of the Iqamah as well, and at the end the Imam to straighten the lines, and we will speak about straightening the lines for the people and how the Prophet ﷺ used to straighten the lines. Adhan in times other than the prayer. Number one, for the newborn, the Prophet ﷺ sent one of the companions actually to make adhan. He said to him, make adhan for the newborn in his right ear and make iqamah in his left ear. And that's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, so that the first thing the baby will hear is what? The adhan. And that's very important for us. Nowadays, especially nowadays, if your wife or if the lady is delivering in a hospital in Australia, you have all of this music around, you have all of this whatever. So it's very important for you to make sure that the first thing that the kid or the baby will hear is actually the sound of the adhan. And that will be like a protection for the baby, inshallah, from any deviation. It is a sunnah to make adhan at the time of fire, so people can be warned, at the time of war, and the traveler to make the adhan. In the ear of depressed person, angry, epilepsy, to make adhan. Why? If there is any shaitan has an influence on the person, what did the Prophet ﷺ say? That when the adhan comes, what happens? Shaitan will leave. So it's sunnah actually to do adhan in the ear of whoever has any of these symptoms. Now we start speaking about prayer, inshallah. So we finished the adhan and the iqamah. Again, don't forget that we have the website. You can just write your questions over there. Shaykh, can you help me? Or what is it? My. So my dot cbox ws forward to the right,
To the left.
to the left, like this. Thursday underscore night underscore fiqh. So any question you have, just open this page and put, and we are going to answer at the end, inshallah. Starting with the prayer, which is the second pillar after shahadatain, after we say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, the Prophet ﷺ said iqam as-salah, so performing salah. So it's the importance of the prayer. There are some conditions that make prayer an obligation on the person. What are these conditions that make prayer obligation? Number one, Islam. So if the person is not Muslim, is prayer obligation on him? The answer is no. Will he be accountable in the day of judgment for not praying? The majority of the scholars, they said yes. So meaning that if he prays actually, is it going to be accepted from him? The answer is no. But will he be punished extra for not praying? The answer is yes. And the evidence is from the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jal said in Surah Al-Muddathir, قَالُوا لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. So the disbelievers will say, we were not praying. But at the first instance, they were not believers. They were not Muslims. So the scholars said, based on this ayah, meaning that Allah will hold them accountable even for prayers, or even for fasting, or even for any of the rituals of Islam. Islam. So Islam is first condition that makes the prayer as an obligation. there is no required repeating of the prayer if the person entered into Islam. Someone entered into Islam and he did not pray for 60 days, 60 years. No requirement for repeating any of these prayers. Just pray since the person starts. If someone left Islam, then returned, he needs to make up all the missed prayers during his leaving of Islam. And that's a punishment for him. As the scholars said, that he requires to do that. No benefit in the hereafter for non-Muslim if he did good deeds. So a non-Muslim doing a good deed, prayer or anything, he will not benefit. But will he benefit in this dunya? The answer is yes. Allah Azza wa Jal is all just, and whoever does good deeds, something like look good. For example, previously I used to have a Christian who actually built a mosque. He donated and built a mosque. Regardless of what is the reason, that's a good deed. You know, what happened to him? He became extra rich. Super rich. So Allah Azza wa Jal is just. However, from the non-Muslims do something good in this life, then what Allah will do is He will pay him back in this dunya, to make sure that he will come in the day of judgment without anything required to be paid off. But if he became Muslim, that's the beautiful part. One of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, "O Messenger of Allah, we used to do some good deeds when we were not Muslims." The Prophet ﷺ said, "They will be counted." So if the person was not Muslim and he was doing good deeds and then he entered into Islam, the sins will be wiped, the good deeds will stay. And Allah Azza wa Jal will give him reward for that, according to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So first condition for prayer to be obligation is Islam. Second condition is to reach puberty, meaning that if the kid did not reach puberty, it's not an obligation on him to pray. But the Prophet ﷺ taught us that we need to teach them to pray. The Prophet ﷺ, Abu Dawud and Imam Ahmad narrated Amr ibn Shu'aib from his father that his grandfather said, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, teach your children to pray when they are 7 years old and discipline them if they do not pray when they are 10, and separate them in their beds. This is classified as Sahih. And the scholars took from this hadith that actually teaching all the aspects of Islam need to start at 7. And one of the things that are beautiful, I like that initiative that happened in Turkey, which I actually took from in order to implement inside my house. Which is, in Turkey they did a sort of like a campaign. The campaign is called I reached 7 and I will start to pray. And in Turkey they do it every year, and whoever reaches 7, he will come to the masjid and he will actually start praying from that day, and he will take home a bicycle with him as a gift from the country. Look how they are actually trying to implement the sunnah of actually teaching the kids. So what I usually do with my kids, whenever one of my kids reaches 7 years old, I will go and buy a cake for them, and then I will do a celebration at home, and I will write on the cake, I reached 7, and I will start praying. So that will give them like an incentive that, okay, now it's time for me to actually start praying as the adults. To follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ by doing that. The third condition for the prayer to be an obligation is the person to be sane. So the drunk is not going to be obliged, but he needs to make it. Or the one who lost his mind, unconscious, anything, or the one who is insane, then it's not an obligation. So the one who is drunk, he needs to make up. The one who is sleeping, he needs to wake up. You need to wake him up actually. The Prophet ﷺ, in one of the authentic hadith, he went for Salat al-Fajr. He did not come by anyone sleeping except he woke him up. So that's a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that if you are going to pray, to wake up people who are sleeping. If you are especially the father of a family, you should wake up following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ when you are going to pray, to wake up whoever is inside your house. So if I find someone who is really sleeping, you know that he will not be held accountable if he missed the prayer, because the Prophet ﷺ said it has been revealed from them the accountability of three, which is the boy until he reaches puberty, and the one who is sleeping until he wakes up. So the Prophet ﷺ in another hadith said, if you forgot a prayer or slept and remembered it, pray it, and that's its time. So shall we leave the person who is sleeping, just let him enjoy sleeping? No, we should wake him up. Especially when the time becomes tight and they are going to miss the prayer, we have to wake them up. It will be accountability for us. Okay, now, speaking about some rulings in the prayer, if some of the conditions that prevented the prayer to be an obligation changed during the prayer, like for example, a kid reached puberty, a woman finished her menses during that, and there is still time for takbir, then the person needs to make up the prayer or needs to actually perform the prayer. So if the woman finished her menses at the end of the time of the Asr prayer before the Maghrib, and the scholars said there is a time enough for saying just Allahu Akbar, then it's obligation on the woman to pray. If the kid reached puberty while he is inside the prayer, of course you will not actually understand how this can happen, because reaching puberty has signs which doesn't happen if the person is inside the prayer. But just as a condition, if it happened and puberty reached inside the middle of the prayer, then after finishing this prayer need to be repeated again. Why? Because it's now an obligation. He started it without being in the obligation. If menses started after enough time to make the prayer, then it's an obligation to make it up after becoming clean. And we said this last time. A woman, Athan Dhuhr came, she was busy at the kitchen, an hour after, menses started. She did not pray Dhuhr. That Dhuhr stays in her neck, and she needs to repeat it after she finishes and she is clean. There are some conditions that the prayer is valid. The first condition that the prayer is valid, it's Islam, sane and differentiating. Okay, so the non-Muslim, prayer is invalid. Someone who has lost his mind in sin, prayer is invalid. A kid that he does not differentiate, prayer is invalid. What about a kid that differentiates, knows how to pray, knows everything? Even though he is below puberty, his prayer is valid. Who takes the reward for that? Him and the parents. Okay? So it's going to be both. Number two, condition of validity of prayer is knowledge of entrance of time. So, if you don't have certain knowledge, so you are not certain that time enters, or you did not make ijtihad that time enters, then what happens is that the prayer is invalid. So if you prayed without any of these two, then the prayer is invalid. So he did not know, I don't know if the prayer entered or the time entered or not. Still I prayed. Then I discovered the time did not enter. Prayer invalid. Then I discovered the time actually when I prayed entered. Prayer still is invalid. The prayer is invalid. What does it mean? I have to make ijtihad to know the time that enters the prayer, or I know that the time entered, then I can pray. So that's a condition to make the prayer valid. Otherwise, I cannot build a worship on doubt. Any worship built on doubt is invalid. So I am praying, I am not sure I have wudu or not wudu. That's invalid prayer because I have doubt. Okay? I am praying, I'm not sure if the time is in or not. That's built on doubt, that's invalid. Okay? Number 3, conditions of validity of prayer: clean from janaba, or what we call the hadath, the small hadath, which what breaks the wudu. Either I clean myself by ghusl if I am at the janaba state, or wudu or tayammum. Do I need to make wudu for sujood shukr? You know the sujood shukr? If I want to thank Allah Azza wa Jal, I just prostrate thanking Him. Do I need to have wudu for that? Yes, I need. Do I need to have wudu for sujood tilawa? I'm reading Quran and you know these sujood, the positions. Do I need wudu for that? Yes, I need. So any type of sujood that I want to do, which is part of salah, it requires wudu. Okay?
If you're reading on phone, tilawa comes to go make wudu.
If you are reading on phone and you want to make sujood tilawa, yes, you go make wudu and do the sujood tilawa.
What about the wudu?
Number 4 conditions that the prayer is valid: cleanliness from physical najasa. When we speak about physical najasa, who can remind us what are the physical najasas? Blood, pus, urine, feces, vomit, alcohol, dead body. Okay, so these are all physical najasas. So cleanliness from physical najasa in the body, clothes, and the place where I want to pray. Okay, it has to be clean. So my body needs to be clean, my clothes need to be clean, and the place where I want to pray needs to be clean. If part of the clothes is attached to najasa, then that invalidates the prayer. Who can think of a situation?
For example, you're in a slaughterhouse working.
You are in a slaughterhouse working, like Brother Jubair. Yes.
So, for example, in that place, you're not in a condition to be in a clean state that easily. What do you do at that moment? For example, you're slaughtering, you have animal blood.
You have animal blood everywhere, and guess what? For example, your pants are long and they are actually in the blood, they are attached to the blood. That's attachment to najasa. You cannot actually perform the prayer. That's invalid. Okay, the prayer is invalid. So what you need to do, you need to find a place where there is the minimum that you can at least put your feet, your knees, and your hands and head in a place where it's clean. Even if the middle part has najasa, no problems. So long as where you touch the place has no najasa. So you need to clean that area. Or else, you can put some cardboards, you can put some paper, you can put anything in order to pray on, to just make it as a barrier between you and the najasa. Then that's allowable.
And even if it's like animal feces, for example, like sheep, goat.
Yes, animal feces is najasa. Okay? If he prayed carrying najasa without knowing, then that invalidates the prayer. Someone actually had a problem with his nose, and lots of blood came, and they put that blood in a tissue, and then in the pocket, prayed. He's carrying najasa. That invalidates the prayer. He should not. If he knows after, then he needs to repeat the prayer. because he was carrying najasa. Okay. If they didn't find except clothes that are najas, then he prays and repeats. So someone did not find clothes to protect his aura, to be able to pray, except clothes that have some najasa on them, they have to pray. As we said, it's required to pray on time regardless the condition, and then repeat after because of praying in najasa. If knew about a najasa in clothes but couldn't find it. So I remember that the najasa came to my clothes. I don't remember, I cannot find the najasa. Tried find it here, but I'm 100% sure that on my pants there is najasa. What to do? If I saw the najasa, I can just wash the place. As you remember, we have to put it and the water needs to go and leave. Go and leave 3 times, that's cleaning. So, what to do? I 100% sure there is najasa on my clothes, don't see it, cannot find it, then you need to wash the whole thing in order to make sure that actually it has been cleaned. If a person prays carrying a rope connected to a dog, the dog is a najasa, so he cannot actually. The prayer is invalid because it's connected to najasa. You can pray carrying a baby so long as the najasa is not obvious on the baby. So if you are praying carrying a baby, baby has napkins, it has the nappies, and they are full of urine. This is najasa. But actually, nothing is coming out. So there is no issues with that. The Prophet ﷺ prayed carrying Amama bintu Abi Al-As. So he prayed carrying Amama for the whole time during his praying, and he was Imam. So long as there is no najasa apparent, you cannot see anything coming out of the baby, then you can pray carrying the baby. And that's a sunnah. If a mother wants to pray and the kid is always crying, sick, you have to carry the baby in order to pray, then carry the baby and pray while carrying the baby. That's a sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ did. There is no issues with that. If he prayed on a place contains najasa without touching it, then there is no harm. So, as we said, there is a place that contains najasa, slaughtering house, full of najasa, full of blood, full of all of this. But you found a spot where actually you can say that there is no najasa in that spot, then there is no harm and the prayer is valid. If he prayed on an area with najasa but put a cover on the najasa, then there is no problem and the prayer is valid. Praying in a park, in the lawn, and we know that lots of animals come and they urinate or did their business, whatever. So what to do? This is applied for anywhere that is open, so you assume that it's always clean and you can pray anywhere. We try to avoid next to the trees because we know that usually the dogs go next to a tree or next to a bush or whatever. In the open area, that's where we actually pray and expect or assume that it is clean, and it's valid to assume that it is clean. So no need to wash the park or the grass in order to pray on it. From the conditions of the validity of the prayer is to cover the awrah. What is the awrah? Which is what is required to be covered, and it's haram to look at. So, focus with me here. The awrah is required to be covered, and it's haram to look at anyone's awrah. Okay? So that's very important. Cover with thick that doesn't show the skin. So any pant that covers the skin, you cannot see the color of the skin, so that's an acceptable cover that can be used. Can wear pants for prayer? For men only. It is not acceptable for women to wear pants while praying. If the awrah was exposed suddenly while praying, then the person covered it, then the prayer is valid. But if he waited and did not cover it, then that invalidates the prayer, because one of the conditions that the prayer is valid is to cover the awrah. Awrah of women in prayer is all her body except face and hands for all scholars, except Imam Abu Hanifa added the feet. So Imam Abu Hanifa speaks that feet are not awrah and the woman can pray without socks. The other three Imams said no, the woman should wear socks and only can be exposed is the face and the hands. Voice of women is not awrah. So whoever says the voice of women is awrah, that's not valid. As the companions used to hear the sound of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. No, they used to come to Aisha radiallahu anha and ask her questions. And she would reply. She would actually teach them. So if her voice was awrah, how come they used to hear her voice? So the voice of the woman is not awrah, so long as actually, as Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَلَا يَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ, and they should not soften their sound or voice. So long as the speech is modest, is mature, then there is no awrah for the sound of the woman. Awrah of men is from belly to knee, and belly and knee are not included in the awrah. But praying, you should cover your belly and cover your knee, because while praying and moving up and down, the knee, the short, for example, if you are wearing short, might go a little bit up and expose some of the thigh, and that's when it's going to invalidate the prayer. So we need to make sure that the awrah is covered fully. Condition number 6, facing the Qibla. So we cannot actually pray without facing the Qibla, and our prayer is invalid if not facing the Qibla. Except at the time of fear, then I can actually not face the Qibla. So if at the time of fear, for example, I see that there is a potential lion coming from that side. If I turn on the Qibla like this and I turn and started praying, the lion might attack me from the back. So from that fear, I actually face the direction where I think the fear might come from that, and then pray it because it's time, then that's a valid prayer, not to face the Qibla because of that fear. If it's in a time of war, if it is a time of something like this, then it all has some rulings. If I'm praying optional prayer while I am traveling, do I need to face the Qibla? No, I don't. So I'm in a car, someone is driving, and we are just going to a trip to Melbourne, and I'm sitting in the car. So I started praying Sunnah. That's the Prophet ﷺ, the companion said, when we used to travel with the Prophet ﷺ, he used to pray on his camel or on his horse, regardless of the direction.
But that's on the Sunnah.
Sunnah, we are saying, Sunnah prayer. So you can pray as much Sunnah. If you are in the aeroplane, you can pray as much Sunnah as you want while sitting in the aeroplane in your seat. No need to face the Qibla. If seeing the Kaaba, there is a need to face it precisely. So if you are seeing the Kaaba, then you need to ask yourself, if I take a line, straight line, from the middle of my chest, will that line hit one of the walls of Kaaba? It has to. Otherwise, the prayer is invalid. If I'm not seeing the Kaaba, like here, for example, we are in Australia, we are not seeing the Kaaba, then we face the direction. As the Prophet ﷺ in one of the hadith said, between east and west there is a Qibla. Meaning that the direction is the one that we meant to face, not the precise location of Kaaba if we are not seeing the Kaaba. It is obligation to do ijtihad to find the Qibla. If I am, as we said last time, if I am not knowing exactly where the Qibla, there is no trust person to tell me where's the Qibla, I need to do ijtihad. I need to use the stars, use the sunset, the sunrise, use the trees, use the wind, use any of these in order to find the direction of the Qibla. If two people were together and one his ijtihad directed him that this is the Qibla, the other directed him that this is the Qibla, which Qibla to take? Nobody can follow the other, they cannot pray Jama'ah. Why? Because everyone's ijtihad was different than the others. Everyone needs to pray on his own. They cannot pray Jama'ah together because I cannot follow the ijtihad of someone else and he cannot follow my ijtihad. So everyone needs to pray on his own. Some of the scholars said, what if a group did ijtihad and they wanted to pray Jama'ah still? And everyone, his ijtihad directed him to a direction and the Imam had another direction. One of the scholars said, okay, everyone will pray in his own direction and they will pray Jama'ah. So imagine one praying this way, this way, this way, and they are all in the Jama'ah in order to take the reward of Jama'ah, but still they cannot pray with the ijtihad of someone else. Did you understand this, Jubair? Yeah. Alright. That's one of how the scholars actually are. Just imagine that this situation happens, what to do and how it should be solved. If praying inside the Kaaba, and that's one of the things that you actually can not follow the direction of the Imam, which is inside the Kaaba. You can pray Jama'ah inside the Kaaba. And what is the direction of the Qibla inside the Kaaba? Do you know? Any direction. Because you need to face one of the walls of the Kaaba. And you are inside the Kaaba, you can pray to any direction. So if there is an Imam inside and he's praying towards one wall, you can pray towards the other wall and you are still in Jama'ah with him. So you can face some. Praying on top of the Kaaba is makrouh. But still, if someone prays on top of the Kaaba, they said at least you have to have a sort of less than one arm of part of the Kaaba to take it as the direction for yourself. Why is it makruh to pray on top of the Kaaba? Because the Kaaba is the house of Allah and it should be magnified and we should respect it rather than step on top of it. So it is makruh to pray on top of the Kaaba or to step on the Kaaba without any valid reason. Nowadays, for example, they change the clothes of the Kaaba, that's a valid reason. But to go on top of the Kaaba just to have fun and see and have a look at it, that's makruh actually. You can pray to any direction while in travel, but only for Sunnah. Now, let's speak about praying on the aeroplane or praying on a ship. The ship is more or less stable. So if you are praying in a ship that is going, for example, for 2 or 3 days in the sea, and then while you are praying, you directed towards the Qibla, and you are praying, and the ship decided to start turning. You have to turn while you are praying to stay facing the Qibla. If we are speaking about the aeroplane, that's where the current day fiqh needs to actually tackle this. I am a little bit stuck with this and I always pray properly inside the aeroplane. Because if I can pray fully, there is no excuse for me to pray while sitting. Okay? So, in the aeroplane, if there is a space where actually you can pray fully, and I haven't, and I will tell you what I experienced in my life. I was only once in my life prevented from praying fully in an aeroplane, which was an aeroplane for a Muslim country. I haven't been prevented from praying on any foreign Western aeroplane or airline.
For the reason.
Was it Qatar?
No, it wasn't Qatar.
The same with Qatar.
Yeah. So, whereas I traveled with Qantas many times, I just go in the back and ask the crew, can I pray in this corner? They will bring me something to cover the ground, and they will say, yeah, have a seat. Sometimes they take me to the exit door, they close the curtain and say, pray in this area. So you can have actually an area where you can pray fully, stand, bow, and do prostration and so on. If you have that ability, you can do fully the prayer, then I don't see any excuse for the person to sit down on his seat and pray. Because you need first to face the Qibla, and you need to be standing while praying, because there is no excuse. You are not sick. But if you are in a situation that you cannot, you were prevented from praying fully, then that's considered as an excuse, and you can still try to face the Qibla while you are praying in the seat as much as you can. Try to make the Takbirat al-Ihram while you are standing. So if the aeroplane is directing towards north and the Qibla is towards the west, try to stand in your seat, face the Qibla, and then do Takbirat al-Ihram while standing, because that's required. And then as much as you can standing do, sit down when you cannot, because you cannot do ruku' while you are standing. Sit down, do ruku' and finish your prayer. But try as much as you can, your best, to fulfill the requirement of praying standing. Okay. Number 7 is the intention. There are conditions for the intention to be valid. Islam, someone is recognizing what he is praying, what he is intending to pray, what prayer, how many rak'ahs. Better to have it with the takbir of the starting, as we spoke about it, that I'm doing the intention by saying Allahu Akbar, and my intention is to pray that. The order, what to do after, that's a condition for the prayer to be valid. I cannot do sujood before ruku'. It needs to be in the same order the Prophet ﷺ did. Not leaving time between prayer acts. I cannot just leave gaps. Leaving the foreign talks while praying. I cannot say anything apart from what is in the prayer. Any letter or two that can be understood will invalidate the prayer. So for example, I am praying and then something happened, I said shh. That invalidates the prayer, because people will understand what I want. The moment you say something that people will understand, then that invalidates your prayer. If you are speaking outside the prayer, if you are speaking inside the prayer with things that are related to the prayer and people can understand from it, that comes for the Arabic language. Sometimes you can, for example, in the Quran, there is a verse says, خُذْهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ. You know the story of Musa alayhi salam, when he threw his stick and it converted into a snake. Allah Azza wa Jal said to him in the Quran, خُذْهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ. Take it and don't be scared. So if you are praying and then someone came next to you and you are praying Maghrib, you are praying loudly, so in order, you want him to take something from the table, and then Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, خُذْهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ. So take it and don't be scared. So you are using the Quran for him to understand that invalidates the prayer. Because you are using words inside the prayer to actually direct people what to do and what you want to do. That invalidates. There is a joke, they say, that one of the imams was reading the same verses of the Quran, and then while he was there, a snake came in front of him. and he stopped reading the Quran. You know how the Imam, when he stops, the people behind him will just give him the verses after if he forgot them. So the verse after was خُذْهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ. So the behind him, the man behind him said خُذْهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ. The Imam said, you come take it. I'm not going to take it. So that's part of like some jokes about how things can go. Yes, your question.
For example, in a room, a person is praying, and he's praying, for example, Maghrib, and he's reciting Quran loudly. But there are others who are talking, which is
Disturbing him.
However, what he does is, whatever ayah he's reciting, he recites it louder.
For them to shut down. Well, this is now he's doing this with the wrong intention.
By intention.
So it comes with intention. Because usually if you say Allahu Akbar loudly because you are alone and you want to just remember Allah Azza wa Jal, that's a valid intention. But usually you are doing Allahu Akbar. But now you are saying Allahu Akbar so people can. So now the intention is not only for Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay, that's where we need to be careful. The prayer is not invalid. The prayer is valid. But the intention is now question mark. Muslim narrated from Zayd ibn Arqam, we used to talk during the prayer, then reveal and stand for Allah with tranquility. Then we were ordered to stay quiet during the prayer. Actually, there was an incident during the companions' time that one sneezed during the prayer, and one of those who was praying said, Yarhamukallah. So during the prayer was, and then he replied, Yahdina wa yahdikum. So the prayer went, the Prophet ﷺ after the prayer said, this is a prayer, nothing is valid inside it except remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal and Quran. Leaving continuous acts which are not part of the prayer. Actually, continuous acts invalidate the prayer. So someone like doing, whereas someone from outside, if he's looking at him, he will say, no way for this person to be in prayer. That invalidates the prayer. Like you see some people, someone, for example, praying and then started walking. That continuous act invalidates the prayer. In Shafi'i, they assign it only for 2 steps. That's why Shafi'is, you say them doing this and then doing another one, not to make continuous. That's according to Shafi'i. But any act, if you are seeing the person doing it and you say, no way for this person to be praying based on the acts that he is doing, that actually invalidates his prayer. Okay? Leaving eating and drinking. So if you are eating or drinking, that will invalidate the prayer. We will come to that as well. But what amount that can invalidate the prayer? So sometimes you left something between your teeth. You ate some nuts. You know how the nuts, they accumulate. And then you came and started praying and all the nuts started coming out. Can you swallow them? The scholar says, what invalidates fasting invalidates praying. That's a ruling. How does it work? So ask yourself, if I swallowed this while fasting, will my fast break? The answer is yes. Then my prayer will be invalidated. So if you have anything in your teeth, just take them out while you are praying. Do not swallow them. Drinking or eating is not allowed while praying. So I think I will just stop at the hadith of the bad prayer of the person, because after that we want to go ahead with the other things in the prayer. So, if there is any question, I will. Inshallah. If you enter mosque and the Imam is almost done with Sunnah, can one wait because he cannot finish sunnah of entering masjid? Yes, if you are 100% sure that you will not be able, just wait. If it is, for example, a couple of seconds and he will start praying, wait for him and join the prayer. Because the Takbirat al-Ihram, which is the start of the Fard prayer, is more rewardable than you praying Sunnah and missing that Takbir. Yes, just wait. Is it required to say As-salatu khayrun min al-nawm for the Fajr Adhan? Yeah, we said that it is required for the Adhan. What if a Muslim stopped praying and then started praying again? Does he have to make up? Yes. What if a Muslim did not pray until he reached 60 years old and he then repented to Allah Azza wa Jal and started praying? He needs to make up all of them. So what does he do actually? The scholars said he prays with every prayer another prayer with the intention that he finishes as he goes. If he passes away before finishing off what he is required, the scholars say, inshallah, Allah will not hold him accountable because he put the plan in order to make up. But he doesn't need to actually make up everything straight away, all these years. But he needs to make up all the years that he missed from the prayer, from the fasting, from anything. Are the prayer times for calendar correct for Dhuhr? Yes. If they based on calculation of the Zionist time, yeah, they are very precise. I even had a project I have done long time ago, 2006, which is I did something called Istirlab, Mizwala. Mizwala is something like the zenith calculation. So I printed that zenith, which is very old, and then I waited for the sun, and it has some calculations on when is the time of Dhuhr, Asr, and so on. So exactly, I was just hearing the Adhan exactly when it is on the exact time. So actually, the calculations of the Adhan now are in a situation that are really, really precise. No need for you to be worried, just follow the calculations of the Adhan. Is it required to make up salah if one missed many prayers while being Muslim? Yes, you are required to make up all of these. Because the first thing that the person will be held accountable for when he enters the grave is salah. So what happens is that the angels will count his salah. He reached puberty at the age of 14. He passed away at the age of 64. How many prayers he needs to do? 50 years. How many times? This is the whole lot of prayers he needs to pray. Okay, count how many prayers did he pray? Oh, he's missing 5 years. Then Allah will say to them, find if he has some sunnahs he prayed. So they will look for his sunnah and try to cover that he missed from the fard. If it's covered, then he is fine. Then he will start the questioning of what he has done. If it's not covered, then he will be doing them, but in the wrong place. So he has first to finish the prayer, and then after that he will be questioned on the other stuff. The first thing to be held accountable or be accountable for is the prayer. Can you pray salah, for example, Dhuhr, 5 minutes before the Adhan? No, and it's invalid. Let's say you need to go out. No, you cannot. The prayer is invalid, and no one on the earth will say to you, your prayer is valid. 1 minute before, if you said Allahu Akbar to start praying, 1 minute, 30 seconds before the start of the Adhan, that's an invalid prayer. But if the Imam or the Adhan said, Allahu Akbar, and you straight away said Allahu Akbar to start praying, that's a valid prayer. Because the start of the Adhan is the start of the time. So even if you start straight away at the beginning of the Adhan, your prayer is valid. Where are we up to? If we get nosebleed after having wudu before salah, do we repeat the wudu? What I believe is a no. Blood does not break the wudu. Remember, we have taken that. So blood bleeding does not break the wudu so long as it doesn't come to your clothes, and because it's najasa. Then you need to wash your clothes. If it did not come, then blood bleeding does not break the wudu. What happens when the imam accidentally passes winds? If the imam accidentally passes winds, he needs straight away to look behind him, pick one who is good in reciting Quran, grab his hand, put him in the imam, and leave. And this is how it should be. The problem happens if the person refuses to go. Then it's going to start a fight. So, but that's how it should be fixed. A person with medical condition who cannot control his bowel, can he still pray if he has najasa on his clothes? Yes. With a medical condition, what he needs to do is to go and make a wudu for each prayer, to make sure that he covers himself, that the najasa does not go out. And then what he does is he just prays the fard, make wudu, remember, for each fard. And he can pray sunnah as many as he wants during that time. But he needs to have one wudu per fard for that person. What about if there are a person medical, is there any different movement of that praying while standing and praying while sitting? Yes. You can pray while sleeping if the medical condition, we will come to that. If the medical condition does not allow you to pray while sitting or standing, you can pray while sleeping, you can pray while in any situation if it's the medical condition. That praying while standing and praying, is it okay? Now I understand. Of course, when you are in sitting case, if you want to pray while sitting, praying sunnah for example, in the aeroplane, so what you make is you make your ruku' a little bit, and then you make your sujood a little bit more. And that's how you differentiate between the ruku' and the sujood while praying sitting. What about sneezing and crying during salah? Do they invalidate the salah too? The answer is no. None of these uncontrollable acts invalidates the prayer. But what invalidates the prayer? Something that you control, like laughing. That will invalidate the prayer. How do you pray in the plane with the time zone changing? How do you know salah times? That's where you have to look at the sun. And I have lots of incidents while traveling, especially when you travel, for example, from Australia to America or go on the other side. That's fun. So, like for example, if you are praying going from Australia, going towards America, what happens is that you will be against the sun. So you'll have 5 minutes, 10 minutes only for Fajr to pray it. You will have maybe 30 minutes for Dhuhr, 30 minutes for Asr. The sun is just moving very fast because you are going the other direction. And guess what? For example, if you are going from Australia to America, and you come, like, if you go Sunday, 9 a.m., your airplane from here. You arrive there Sunday, 10 a.m. And you pray 5 times. And actually, because the sun will full day. And what's going on? And then after that, what happens is that you need to pray. So you already prayed 5 times a day for Sunday. And you arrive there on Sunday. So you need to pray for Sunday as well. So you pray for one day 10 times. In the way back, it will be the other way around. So you will be just departing from there Sunday morning, going with the sun. So you'll have only one set of prayers arriving Tuesday. because of the time zone, because the time zone is between America and Australia. So that's where the day starts. So you will have the same time, but because of the sun movement, you will lose one day. So once I came to one of the big scholars, I said to him, this happens. How would you do? He said, is it really happens? He said, yeah, this is how it happens. How would you do? I said, I don't know. I said, I follow the sun. Just follow the sun. And when you see the sun, just starting, pray Fajr, going up, pray Dhuhr, and so on. So try your best to follow the sun in the aeroplane. And that's the ijtihad that we spoke about in the timing matter. If a woman has, how do you pray in the airplane? No. This one. If a woman has istihada and she uses a tampon, then the blood will not exit her body. In this case, she is required to make wudu before each prayer. Yes, she can use, so long as she can block the blood from coming out, so she can make wudu for each prayer. If the imam passes wind and continues leading salah, is the prayer for following him valid? No, it's invalid. So everyone needs to repeat.
What if he doesn't?
That's it. He needs to tell you. Other guys, you need to repeat the prayer.
And if he doesn't tell you?
And you don't know, he will carry the burden for each one. That's why we said that the imam is guarantor for the prayer. So if he passed it wind, he did not say to anyone, he continued praying, and nobody knew after him. That's not their business. That's his accountability. So he will be held accountable, not them. If a female doesn't get her period until the age of 15 and doesn't pray till then, does she have to repeat the prayers at a certain age, or it doesn't count? Well, the Prophet ﷺ said to us that at the age of 10, everyone should be praying. But that praying is not praying for obligation. Praying for what we are required to train our kids for. If they did not do anything of the obligations until they reach puberty, they will not be held accountable. But we disobeyed the Prophet ﷺ by not allowing or teaching our kids to do the worships at the age of 7 and then be firm with them at the age of 10. So that's the only thing. But for it to be obligation, remember, one of the conditions is puberty. Before puberty, they have to pray, but it's not obligation. Okay? She doesn't need to make up anything. If she started at puberty or age 15, whichever first, then she's fine. Or he is fine. Whoever started. No need to repeat anything. Okay? جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.